The distress signal captain, Marcus Vale, stared at the tactical display aboard the human freighter Iron Resolve, his weathered hands gripping the command chair as an emergency beacon pierced through space. The signal was unlike anything he had encountered in 20 years of deep space hauling. It wasn't the standard distress frequency used by human vessels, nor did it match any known alien communication protocol in their databases. "Sir, we're picking up something strange," reported Lieutenant Jonas Pike from the communications station, his young face creased with confusion. "The signal is coming from the Nexus Belt asteroid field. That area has been marked as forbidden territory by the Galactic Council for over a decade." Vale rubbed his stubbled chin, considering their options. The Iron Resolve was a cargo vessel, not a rescue ship. They carried mining equipment to the outer colonies, not weapons or medical supplies. But something about the signal made his chest tighten with urgency. It reminded him of his daughter's cries when she was young, desperate, and afraid. "Patch it through to the main speakers," he ordered, ignoring the questioning looks from his crew of 12 hard-working humans who had signed on for routine cargo runs, not dangerous rescue missions. The bridge filled with an otherworldly sound that made their teeth ache. High-pitched keening mixed with what sounded like sobbing, but the harmonics were wrong for human vocal cords. Dr. Rebecca Torres, their medical officer and xenobiology specialist, leaned forward with wide eyes. "Captain, those vocal patterns suggest a juvenile of some unknown species. The distress markers are universal across most intelligent life forms. Whatever is making that sound is young, injured, and terrified." Engineer Tommy Fitzgerald looked up from his console, sweat beading on his dark skin. "Sir, sensors are showing debris scattered across a 3-kilometer radius. Whatever happened out there was violent. Metal fragments, organic compounds, and something else. Energy signatures I've never seen before." The crew exchanged nervous glances. They all knew the stories about the Nexus Belt. Ships that entered, rarely returned, and those that did spoke of strange phenomena that defied explanation. The Galactic Council had declared it off-limits after 3 separate exploration missions vanished without a trace. But the crying continued, a sound that cut through their fear and touched something primal in their human hearts. Vale had lost his own daughter to a plague 5 years ago. The sound reminded him of helplessness, of being too late to save someone who needed him. "Sir," Pike said quietly, "we could report this to the authorities. Let them handle whatever is out there." Vale stood slowly, his decision crystallizing. "No. By the time they organize a response, whoever is making that sound will be dead. We're the only ship in range. Set course for the source of the signal." His crew looked at him with a mixture of respect and concern, but none protested. They trusted their captain, and deep down, they all heard what he heard in that alien cry. First contact. The debris field stretched before them like a graveyard of stars. Twisted metal gleamed in the light of a distant sun, and among the wreckage, the Iron Resolve detected something that made their hearts race. A small pod, barely larger than an escape capsule, drifted silently through the void with faint life signs emanating from within. "Bringing it aboard now," announced Chief Petty Officer Maria Santos as the cargo bay doors sealed behind the recovered pod. The object was beautiful in its alien design, covered in scales that shifted color like oil on water. Intricate patterns covered its surface, almost like living artwork that pulsed with inner light. Dr. Torres approached the pod with her scanner active, her hands shaking slightly as she recorded readings that shouldn't have been possible. "The life form inside is definitely juvenile, but the physiology is incredible. Redundant organ systems, regenerative cellular structure, and neural activity that suggests intelligence far beyond what we'd expect from a child." The pod cracked open with a sound like breaking crystal, releasing a mist that smelled of ozone and exotic flowers. Inside, curled in a nest of what looked like living silk, was a creature that took their breath away. She appeared humanoid, but with skin that shimmered between blue and silver, large eyes that held depths like looking into starlight, and delicate features that spoke of grace and nobility. The child was clearly injured, with cuts across her arms and a bruise darkening her temple. But when she saw the humans gathering around her, she didn't cry out in fear. Instead, she tilted her head and spoke in a voice that harmonized with itself, creating music from words. "You came," she whispered in accented but clear English, as if she had been expecting them. "I called across the dark waters and you answered. My name is Zara of the Seventh Current. Are you the ones they call humans?" Captain Vale knelt beside the pod, his parental instincts overriding first contact protocols. "We're here to help. I'm Captain Vale. What happened to your ship?" Zara's large eyes filled with tears that sparkled like liquid diamonds. "The shadow. Hunters found us. They destroyed our transport and took Mama to the dark stations where they steal thoughts and dreams. I hid in the emergency pod. But I was so afraid. So cold and alone." Dr. Torres finished her medical scan, relief evident in her voice. "She's hurt but stable. Some cuts and bruises, definitely dehydrated, but nothing life-threatening. Captain, her species has remarkable healing abilities. She should recover quickly with basic care." As they helped Zara from the pod, she looked around at the humans with wonder rather than fear. "You are smaller than I expected, but your hearts burn bright. I can sense the warmth you carry for those you protect. You saved me even though you do not know what I am." Tommy stepped forward with a blanket, wrapping it gently around the child's shoulders. "That's what humans do, kid. We help when someone needs help. It's just who we are." Zara smiled, and the expression transformed her face from merely beautiful to radiant. "Mama told me stories about your kind. She said humans were young but fierce, that they protected others even when it meant danger for themselves. I thought they were just tales to help me sleep." Pike monitored the communications array nervously. "Sir, we need to decide what to do. If these shadow hunters are still in the area, we could be in serious danger. Our cargo ship isn't equipped for combat." But Vale was studying Zara's face, seeing intelligence and something else: authority. Despite her youth, she carried herself with the bearing of someone accustomed to respect. "Zara, who is your mother? What aren't you telling us?" The child looked down at her hands, and when she spoke, her voice carried weight that seemed impossible for someone so young. "Mama is Queen Lyrelay of the Oceanic Dominion. And if the shadow... Hunters have taken her. They have started a war they cannot win." The Queen's Gambit. 3 days later, the Iron Resolve found itself in the most unlikely situation of its career. What had started as a routine cargo run had transformed into a diplomatic mission that could reshape human relationships with the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. Queen Lyrelay of the Oceanic Dominion stood in their cargo bay, having arrived in a ship that made their freighter look like a toy. The Queen was magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. She stood nearly 8 feet tall, with the same shimmering skin as her daughter, but marked with intricate patterns that seemed to move like living tattoos. Her eyes held depths that suggested millennia of experience, and when she moved, space itself seemed to bend around her presence. "You saved my daughter," she said, her voice creating harmonics that made the ship's hull vibrate in response. "This is a debt that cannot be repaid with simple gratitude." Captain Vale had faced down pirates, navigated through stellar storms, and negotiated with some of the toughest traders in known space. But standing before this alien queen, he felt like a small child being evaluated by a force of nature. "We did what any decent beings would do, Your Majesty. She needed help." Queen Lyrelay's expression was unreadable as she studied each member of his crew in turn. Dr. Torres held her ground under that cosmic gaze, though her hands trembled slightly. Tommy straightened to his full height, meeting the Queen's eyes with the stubborn courage that had served humanity well in its expansion among the stars. Your species interests me, the Queen continued, moving with fluid grace to examine their ship's modest technology. You possess vessels that are crude by our standards, weapons that are primitive, knowledge that barely scratches the surface of cosmic truth. Yet you risk everything to save a child you do not know, of a species you have never encountered. Zara bounded to her mother's side, her injuries already healed to faint silver lines on her skin. Tell them about the shadow hunters, Mama. Tell them what you're planning. The Queen placed a protective hand on her daughter's head, but her attention remained fixed on the humans. The beings who attacked us call themselves the Void Collective. They consume civilizations, stripping away everything that makes a species unique and adding it to their endless hunger for conquest. They have been moving through this galaxy for centuries, and now they have set their sights on your young Earth. The words hit the crew like a physical blow. Pike stepped forward, his face pale but determined. Are you saying Earth is in danger? Not just Earth, Queen Lyreley replied, her mental voice now speaking directly into their minds with intimacy that felt like violation and gift combined. They plan to harvest your entire species. Humans possess something they prize above all else, the ability to hope against impossible odds, to fight when victory seems impossible, to sacrifice for strangers. Without thought of reward, Dr. Torres found her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. Why would they want that specifically? The Queen's smile was predatory and sad. Because hope is the one force in the universe that can defeat entropy itself, and they have learned to weaponize it. Captain Vale felt the weight of worlds settling on his shoulders. His simple cargo crew had stumbled into something that threatened not just their lives but their entire species. What can we do? We're just 12 people with a freight hauler. You can accept my gift, Queen Lyreley said, and suddenly the cargo bay filled with beings that had materialized from nowhere. Tall, graceful figures in armor that seemed to be carved from starlight itself, carrying weapons that hummed with barely contained energy. I am placing my personal guard at your disposal. My finest warriors, my most advanced technology, my knowledge accumulated over eons. The implications hit them all at once. Tommy was the first to find his voice. You're asking us to fight a war. No, the Queen corrected, her eyes blazing with inner fire. I am asking you to save a galaxy, and in return, I will ensure that humanity takes its rightful place among the great powers of the cosmos. The Shadow War begins. The battle for humanity's future began not with grand fleets or political declarations, but with 12 cargo haulers and their alien allies moving through the void like ghosts. Queen Lyreley had been true to her word, providing technology that transformed the humble iron resolve into something that could stand against the Void Collective's harvester ships. Captain Vale stood on a bridge that now sparkled with holographic displays showing battle formations across 3 star systems. The Queen's warriors, beings called the Tide Guard, moved through his ship with purpose that spoke of centuries of combat experience. Their leader, a tall figure named Current Keeper Thane, had spent the past week teaching Vale's crew tactics that treated space itself as a weapon. The shadow hunters move in patterns, Thane explained, his translated voice carrying undertones of ocean depths and storm winds. They seek to isolate and consume. But humans fight differently than any species we have encountered. You adapt, improvise, refuse to accept defeat even when mathematics suggests you should. Dr. Torres had integrated herself with the Queen's science division, her human curiosity proving invaluable in understanding Void Collective technology. They're not just stealing resources, she reported during their strategy meeting. They're harvesting something deeper. Memories, emotions, the very essence of what makes a species unique, and they're building something with it. The first engagement came without warning. 3 Void Collective ships materialized near Earth's outer defense grid, their dark hulls seeming to absorb light itself. Vale watched through quantum-linked sensors as Earth's defense forces opened fire, their weapons barely scratching the enemy's shields. "This is our moment," Vale announced to his crew, men and women who had signed on to haul cargo and found themselves defending their species. "Tommy, give me everything the engines can handle. Maria, coordinate with Thane's warriors. We're going to show these shadow hunters what humans do when someone threatens our home." The iron resolve dropped out of hyperspace. Like a falling star, its modified hull blazing with energy patterns that the Void Collective had never encountered. Vale's crew fought with desperate innovation, using cargo loading equipment as weapons platforms and emergency protocols as battle tactics. But it was the human element that proved decisive. When Pike's communications array was damaged, he jury-rigged, a replacement using coffee makers and emergency beacons. When Dr. Torres needed to analyze enemy technology, she combined human medical scanners with alien quantum processors in ways that violated 3 laws of physics, but somehow worked. The Void Collective ships retreated, but not before transmitting data about this new resistance. Across the galaxy, ancient minds that had consumed 1,000 civilizations suddenly focused their attention on a small blue world and its stubborn inhabitants. Queen Lyrelay appeared on their bridge through quantum projection, her expression mixing pride with concern. "You have announced yourselves to the galaxy, humans. The Void Collective now knows that Earth will not fall easily. They will come with everything they have." Vale looked around at his crew, seeing exhaustion, but also something else. Purpose. They had found something worth fighting for, something bigger than their individual lives. "Then we'll be ready for them." Tommy grinned, his engineers' hands already planning modifications to their ship's systems. "They want to see what humans are capable of? Let's give them a show they'll never forget." The Shadow War had begun, and, for the first time in centuries, the Void Collective faced an enemy that refused to accept the inevitability of defeat. The birth of an empire. 6 months after that first battle, the galaxy looked very different. What had started with 12 humans and a cargo ship had grown into something that made ancient civilizations pause and reconsider their understanding of power. The Terran Liberation Fleet now numbered in the thousands, with human ships modified by oceanic technology, serving alongside vessels from dozens of species who had thrown off the Void Collective's influence. Captain Vale stood in the command center of the Titan's Resolve, the flagship that had grown from his humble freighter. Around him, beings from across the galaxy worked together with a efficiency that would have been impossible before humanity's arrival on the galactic stage. The humans had brought something new to their alliance, the belief that any enemy could be defeated if you were willing to pay the price. "Final battle groups are in position," reported Pike, now wearing the insignia of a fleet admiral despite his protests that he was just a communications officer. "All sectors report ready for the assault on the Collective's core systems." Dr. Torres materialized via hologram from her research station on New Geneva, humanity's first extrasolar colony and now the galaxy's premier center for anti-void technology. "The weapon is ready, Captain. The Collective's ability to harvest consciousness can be reversed. We can free every species they've absorbed over the millennia." The plan was audacious even by human standards. Rather than simply defeating the Void Collective, they intended to undo centuries of conquest, returning stolen essence to the civilizations that had been consumed. It required technology that pushed the boundaries of possibility and tactics that bordered on insanity. Queen Lyrelay stood beside Vale, her presence still commanding but now touched with something that looked remarkably like affection. "When I saved my daughter and you saved her in return, I thought I was repaying a simple debt. I never imagined it would lead to this. The battle for the Collective's core world lasted 7 days and reshaped the fundamental balance of galactic power. Human fighters, small and seemingly fragile, proved impossible to predict or counter. They used debris as weapons, turned their own damage into advantages, and refused to retreat even when their ships were coming apart around them. Tommy had built weapons that shouldn't have worked but did. Maria had coordinated fleet movements that violated every principle of space combat, but somehow achieved victory. Dr. Torres had created technology that merged human intuition with alien science in ways that produced miracles. When the collective's central consciousness finally fell, the liberation was immediate and overwhelming. Across the galaxy, species that had been enslaved for generations suddenly found themselves free. The stolen essence of 1,000 civilizations returned to where it belonged, and with it came gratitude that would reshape interstellar politics for generations. But the greatest change was humanity itself. No longer the young species clinging to a single world. Humans now stood as liberators, innovators, and leaders. The Terran Empire wasn't built through conquest, but through the simple human belief that everyone deserved freedom and that any enemy could be defeated if you were willing to sacrifice for others. Vale looked out at the fleet assembled around them, ships from dozens of species flying in formation with the Terran flag. His cargo crew had become the founding fathers of an interstellar empire, and they had done it by staying true to the values that made them human. "Sir," Pike said quietly, "we're receiving communications from across the galaxy. Species we've never contacted are asking to join the Alliance. They want to be part of what we've built." Zara, now grown into a young woman who served as humanity's first alien ambassador, smiled with an expression that held both wisdom and mischief. "Mama always said humans were special. I don't think even she imagined how special." The Terran Empire was born not from conquest, but from compassion, not from strength, but from the willingness to help a frightened child in the darkness of space. And across the galaxy, beings learned that sometimes the greatest powers came from the smallest acts of kindness.